What's going on, everybody? You're watching the O Show podcast. This is episode 692 of the podcast. We are presented by Blue Wire Media, Blue Wire Studios here out at the Wynn in Las Vegas, Nevada. Again, episode 692 of the podcast. We're getting up there. We're almost to 700, Adrian.
Listen, it's spectacular. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. This is Adrian Hernandez, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, Mom. It's the first person I go to.
98.5 The Bet out here in Las Vegas.
Yes.
That's so official,
yes,
the radio station.
The Bet, Odyssey Sports, also the Sporting Tribune. I do some digital stuff and cover the Aces, cover the Raiders. So a sports guy on the radio. And
a sports fanatic, well-rounded individual, fresh off of his trip from San Juan, Puerto Rico.
I went back home to the island, ladies and
Yeah, I
gentlemen.
appreciate you taking time out of your oh-so-busy schedule to be here.
No, of course, man. Thank you. We talked right before we hit record. Being here in Las Vegas and living here, and I know some friends that use this studio. Shout out to Andreas. Shout out to Kel with the Corner Podcast and the Blue Wire family. Thank you so much for having me. This place is as good as it looks on Instagram, and as a content creator, this is like a fantasy come true.
Hey, if you want to stick around, Kel's going to be here at 5 doing the Corner Podcast. So.
Yeah, I need to see who else he's sneaking in. You see, because he's a big wrestling guy.
He's always got big guests. Him and Andreas.
Yeah, exactly. So I might have to sneak it back. Hey, man, you got 2 minutes. Let me ask whoever you guys are talking to. But no, this is a dream. Congratulations on your success. I know we're about to get into a lot of stuff, but I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
Oh, you're fresh off your interview with Soraya. You put it out yesterday, but was it?
So it just came out. It was super dope. It was kind of weird because of the pandemic, and although we're getting away from it, right? That was one of the first in-studio interviews that I've done, in person. When I've done in-person ones, they've kind of been backstage or they're at events. I was like, oh, we're back in the studio like we used to be. So it was a little weird for me getting back into the swing of things and not just doing it on Zoom. But she was incredible. We were supposed to talk for about 15 minutes. We went over 25 minutes. It was almost a half-hour conversation.
Not the best.
Yeah, no, it was dope. And she was very, it was cool because I could tell. I knew when it was scheduled in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, crap. Because she's here on a media run because AEW is going to be here in Las Vegas for Double or Nothing. So she went to every TV station, every radio station, every podcast. And I was the second to last one. She came to me, and then she came here to the Blue Wire Studios to do the Corner Podcast. And I could tell her energy was a little just like, hey, man, I've been talking for 10 hours. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to ask the same questions, and I need to get the energy up. And she was kind of down for the ride. I made a couple quibs, and I was like, you can curse and say whatever you want. And she just lit up, and it was just great to talk to her. Her story, her coming back to wrestling was super awesome stuff. So I was glad for the opportunity and glad to finally do something in studio with another human being, not on a little screen off of my monitor. Do you even consider, when you do Zoom interviews, do you consider that you've met them?
Well, that's Chris Van Vliet's big thing. He always says, I don't think you've truly met someone unless you've done the interview in person.
Well, when you're talking to celebrities and stuff, they talk to 1 million people. So, for instance, I told you I cover some of the teams, the Aces, the Las Vegas Aces. Their season's, 4, 5, 6 months because they won the championship last year, so they were playing for a long time. And even a couple of them were still like, hey, I remember you. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I'm at every game. We talk before the game and after the game. How did my little ego, how dare you not know who I am? But it's just one of those things. So it was cool to do it in person and, get back into the swing of things. It's been long enough.
Yeah, you build a relationship that way versus on Zoom where it's just like you say one wrong thing, click. Oh, what happened? Did the connection go? No, you said something wrong.
And especially if you're we had a very fun time. We started talking about nudes, genitalia, all the fun family things. Yes, it was a family podcast. Be sure to tune in with your kiddos, sex education on it. But it was it was cool to see just in person kind of the lid be opened up and seeing her have fun. And she had her friends that live here in Las Vegas. So they came out and you could tell that they were having fun in the back. And then some of the AEW suits, the suits that were there. It's cool for me too because when we're doing these Zoom interviews, they appreciate it. But when they see what's going on, it's a whole different ballgame. For you, for instance, everyone has a podcast, right? And blah, 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 blah. And yeah, it looks nice. But when you're here and you see what's actually going on, it's a different ballgame and it sticks to their head. And, the plan is, to level up and do bigger and better always. So that kind of helped. So, yeah, it was a great interview, though. And yeah, super excited. Vegas, we're very fortunate to have everything that we have, from wrestling to whatever the heck.
Dude, especially with Double or Nothing every single year. I feel like Double or Nothing is going to be AEW's WrestleMania event where it's going to be the staple. It's going to be in Vegas every single year just because of the whole vibe to it, like the poker chips and whatnot. And there's going to be so many people probably here that weekend too that you're going to be able to grab.
Yeah, and it's like to me, it's this year's a little bit different because they announced they're all in, which for people
in London, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be Wembley Stadium. I believe they've already sold 70,000 tickets. I'm pretty sure they're going to sell 90,000. So Reyes said 90,000. I was like, not yet, really? So it's going to be their biggest spectacle that they've ever had. But this has been the tradition. Other than one of the years because of the pandemic, they didn't come out here. They've been doing it this is going to be the fourth or fifth time. And it kind of kicks off the summer, and they're here for their TV tapings, Rampage and Dynamite. They're doing like a fan fest at the MGM. So they're spending the entire week here, and all their talent's coming. And when you have big shows in wrestling, all the independents come as well, and all the independent wrestlers that you see on YouTube or all these shorts on Instagram that do crazy stuff, well, you finally get to see them in person. And it should be fun. And I'm super excited because last year we were able to talk to a couple people, but they were just phone interviews. But this year's a different ball game, and we're going to be out here. And it's just, I'm very, very thankful, doing sports this time period. No offense, because I know you're a huge baseball fan. I used to be. I'm not as much anymore because I'm a father now.
What does that mean?
Well, that just means I'm watching Bluey. That's what that means. I'm watching Teen Titans.
But once they're like 6, 7, 8 years old.
Well, we're trying. We dip the toes in everything, sports and wrestling included. He's just very fascinated with Batman right now. Yeah. So him and Spider-Man's. Yeah, exactly. So, but what I'm saying is, like, this time period in sports is kind of the dead period because free agency's over in the NFL and the draft just happened and baseball isn't as big. Thankfully, we have the NBA playoffs are heating up as we head to the finals. So with wrestling and AEW doing their Double of Nothing shows and WrestleMania, like, wrestling has kind of filled in that gap, and people have seemed to enjoy some of the things that I'm doing with that. So it's cool because in my head, these are the months that I despise because I'm like, what the hell are we going to be talking about? I'm not going over this schedule of the Raiders for 3 months talking about who do you think's going to win or should we make this trade or blah, 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 blah. So it's like, no, cool. I can insert wrestling that'll lead into the basketball, that'll lead into the football, and then we're off and rolling.
That's right, dude. Who do you think is going to be the Raiders' worst opponent on their schedule in 2023?
I mean,
since you mentioned it.
Well, I mean, since we're here right now, it's going to be the Chiefs until Patrick Mahomes isn't.
Chiefs, everybody's given the Broncos their due this year with Sean Payton.
Who's their quarterback? Russell Wilson, right? That's a problem. That's why I brought that up. That's a big problem, at least in my opinion.
I think maybe he just had a really, really, really bad year last year.
I mean, true, and it was like a historic fall off, but a smaller quarterback who consistently still gets hurt. I just think we've seen, if you look at the stats, every year it gets a little worse and worse and worse. And, age is a serious thing, especially for that body type. I mean, you can look around the league, Kyler Murray, there's a whole bunch of dudes that are smaller that aren't having as much success as we thought they would. Baker Mayfield's another one. So I don't think it's the Broncos. For the Raiders, I think it's the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes are the champs, and he's the GOAT until proven otherwise.
Do you think Pat Mahomes will surpass Brady when it's all said and done?
In terms of titles?
Rings-wise?
Oh, man. Well, he already has a better voice, and I can't wait. I need him to do King of the Hill immediately. Title-wise, probably not, though. That Brady's unbeatable. He probably cheated for a couple. Things have happened, so it is what it is. But I shouldn't be saying that because I'm an Aces reporter, and I think he's about to buy part of the Raiders, too. So I may be screwing up my access, but I'm not the biggest New England and Brady fan. But Mahomes he'll compete for it. I don't think he's going to have more Super Bowls than Brady.
I mean, he's still, how old? 27, 28 years old. He's already got 2. He's been to 3.
He's a little.
I don't see anybody in the AFC really knocking at the door, like you said.
I mean, you might have Burrow. Burrow's coming up there, and Burrow's
I don't know
if
he's ready yet. He's proven himself. The Bengals will be involved every year moving forward.
He has the age on his side that he's still so young, and he's went to the Super Bowl already. They competed last year, so we'll see. But Burrow, I don't think. I mean, you got Lamar. I mean, it's the AFC with all those groups of quarterbacks. You got Tua, you got Rodgers, you got Josh Allen. Like, the AFC is stacked, and then in the NFC, it's like Jalen Hurts, and who else? So it is one of those things. Look at you getting me back into football
That's right.
mode. I like that.
I'm trying to keep you on your toes.
I appreciate that because I'm
shake
like,
you off your rhythm a little bit.
I'm all here
Adrian.
just thinking about spray tans and steel chair shots. I'm all like in a wrestling mode, and now we're back into football. I like it.
What do you think of Jericho's spray tan? I feel like he's gone with the spray tan for like the last couple of years, and I'm like,
I will look. People love his song. Shout out to that.
Judas is a great song.
It's kind of when's enough, guys. It's been like 4 years. We still singing this? Like you're like yes,
Yeah.
we are. Hey man, listen.
Dude, I sat ringside. It was Dynamite. The week before they were in Phoenix, the week before the MJF and Bryan Danielson Iron Man match, and Jericho was taking on Ricky Starks, and I couldn't wait until Judas hit. I couldn't wait till the Jericho Appreciation Society came out so I could sing Judas by Fozzy.
It was like Bad Bunny at Backlash. Everyone was waiting for his entrance. Look, salute
right.
to that man. He's a legend. He actually played a big part in me getting back into wrestling because, like most, I kind of dropped off in my teenage years once you hit puberty and girls, sports, video, Halo, you know what I mean, on Xbox Live. So
They don't complement each other, is what you're saying.
yeah, so I was kind of out, but because of Jericho's book, I randomly read his first one was legendary, and the stories on there were incredible. So that kind of got me back into it. I mean, he's still going. He's still top tier. He's one of the guys leading the way, and salute to them. Salute to everybody in AEW. You know how crazy wrestling is right now that we're talking about Bad Bunny and Backlash and everything that happened there, and WrestleMania and the success it was, and AEW getting a new TV show, extra time, like they're about to go to Wembley Stadium, 90,000. It's a good time to be a wrestling fan, and Jericho played a big part of it, so salute to him.
Jericho's the reason I'm sitting here talking to you today. I'm like, oh, Jericho, not only is he a kick-ass pro wrestler, he's a kick-ass frontman for a rock and roll band. He also has his own podcast host, which is like one of the top 10 wrestling podcasts out there, amongst other things that he talks about on his show, because he's so well-rounded and so diverse in what he talks about with all of his different guests. I'm like, I'm going to do that. I want to do a podcast. You know, I already got into broadcasting, like in play-by-play. I'm like, I want to do a podcast too. And I want Jericho to be one of my guests one day. And
Has
we're
it
working on
happened
that. I got to ask him a few questions. I met him in person a few times. I haven't had him like on the show in a studio for like a 1 hour sit-down interview yet.
Not yet.
That's the goal. Even if it's like 20 minutes, you know? I'm down.
Is that
I know what to ask him, you know?
Is that one of your, like, okay, so is there a GOAT list that you have, like a set of 5 that you want to do?
Yes.
Let's speak it into existence
All right,
now.
I want, let's count down from 5. I want you to start with your 5th.
Let's go Tyler, the Creator.
Why Tyler, the Creator?
I appreciate his music. I think he's a visionary. Everything that he's touched. He used to have a show on Adult Swim, Lord of Squad. His music, him moving into film and like being the head music of all these movies and his clothing line and his festival, and just I think he's a genius, and it's really cool because he did it his own way.
That's really cool, dude. I'm gonna go Jack Black for number 5.
Peaches, peaches, peaches.
Jack
peaches.
Black. I think School of Rock from the time I was 5 till now is my all-time favorite movie. I can quote anything, just on a whimsical.
I don't want to. I'm gonna embarrass myself. I've never seen that movie.
Why?
You're
wasting your time, Adrian. That is the perfect way to introduce your kid to both rock and roll, pop culture, comedy,
There
anything.
it is. Whatever streaming service it is, we will watch it. We'll watch it. School of Rock. You got my word. I will watch it. So you got Jack Black at 5. For number 4, damn, am I gonna have to go music again?
Yeah, you got to be a little bit diverse.
Well, I don't like. I'm not huge. Like, there's no. What movie star do I want to interview and be like, damn, what have you done? Let's go. Do I do sports? Do I do wrestling? Okay, this is someone I did want to talk to, and I did. The Undertaker.
You got Mark?
I talked to Undertaker for 15 minutes, like
You
a
got
month and a half ago.
15 minutes with Taker. It's so funny because now that he's doing interviews left and right, he's
So
got his
weird.
Dead Man Walking show. He's doing media for all of his documentaries. It's like he never did it for 30 years, dude. He was the Undertaker for 30 years. Now Mark Calloway all of a sudden popped out, and he's like the coolest dude ever.
He's like, I can finally talk. I'm never going to shut up. And, well, the cool thing about that is that my entire life, I always wondered, especially once I got into the thick of like, oh, I actually work at the radio station. I talk like I'm trying to make, and I am making my dreams happen. Is like, there's a certain amount of like, what am I going to do? For instance, another person I'm going to name on my list, I'll skip ahead one more, Kendrick Lamar.
That's 3.
Yeah, so there's 3 right there. Favorite rapper. Just I think he's a genius. But like if someone's like, hey, you got an hour with him, I'm just gonna be here like, bro, your music's so crazy. Like I don't know the specific things, but when I was told about The Undertaker, it was a last minute thing. They asked me, hey, do you have time? I was like, do I have time to talk to The Undertaker? And it's one of those things. It's like, I don't want to mess this up. This is one of the greatest of all time. This is the dude that got me back into wrestling because I watched WrestleMania 25 versus Shawn Michaels, and I didn't watch wrestling for
Well,
years.
let me ask you this. What if they asked you that while your girl was in labor?
It's a great story. This is a true story with my son. 31 hours for him to be born. Finally happened. That morning, after the nap, after he was born, Wiz Khalifa was in town. I'm still living in Phoenix. He was on his tour with the Ray Shremmerd. And in my head, I was like, I'm not going to this concert. My son was just born. I want to spend time with my son, and I want to spend time with my girl as she recovers from the unexplainable that I just witnessed in this hospital room and the amount of blood and everything, the process of a baby and a child being brought to this earth. And she looks over to me and she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm holding my son for the first time. She's like, you got to go to work, go interview Wiz. And I was like, damn, you're a real one. So you bring that up about pregnancies and stuff. That is a real life story. She kicked me out of the hospital.
So you would have been interviewing Taker regardless.
Yeah. But the cool thing was
you picked
in my
a good
head,
one.
Yes, I picked a good one, and I didn't have any trepidation. And I always wondered because I thought I would. But in my head, I'm like, no, can we do it now? Because I've been watching him my whole life. I don't need to study up on anything. I have specific things I want to ask him. So that made me feel good that if the moment presents itself, because sometimes like the Soraya interview, I knew it was going to happen for 2 weeks. And that was annoying because now I'm watching every interview she's done for the past year. I'm on her wiki. And I'm like, now I'm turning this into a test when I really just want to have a conversation. Yeah. And I can imagine you run into this.
That's the tricky part about this industry, man. It's like, it's very easy. It's like, this was my dream. This was probably something you wanted to do forever. It's like you are sitting down and having a conversation with someone. And the more off the cuff it is like this, the more you're going to talk about stuff that they haven't talked about before.
Exactly. Like, I've never told that story like and as a form of content. Like, very few people know about that Wiz story. And the one thing that like I'm starting to mess with now, as I start to realize that the radio industry, kind of like the newspaper industry, is dying and it is changing. And if you think you're just going to step into a studio with no camera, no lights, no presentation, no Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, and think you're going to be successful, you're playing yourself. But in making reels and TikToks, I'm like, oh crap, I don't want to be like a paparazzi in terms of now I'm trying to get you to say this 60-second clip that I can post online and go crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of balancing those two things, but genuinely, and I always knew I wanted to be on the radio, but once I started to do this, even when I was in college, when I started having conversations with people, whether it is musicians, authors, athletes, actors, whatever, I was like, that's the art of conversation is like super, super dope, which is why I give you credit for what you've done. You brought up Chris. Chris, he's fantastic. He actually did TV in Cleveland while I was growing up. And I specifically remember he interviewed The Rock because this is 2010, 11 when he came back and was fighting Cena. And I'm like, oh, this dude got to interview The Rock years later. I'm like, oh, this dude like loves wrestling. He's not just some dude on TV.
That's right.
And I know he does a show from here, right?
He does.
Does he live here?
He lives in LA, but he flies in here at least once or twice a month.
Everybody flies in the Blue Wire Studios.
Right.
He's someone at WrestleMania at Media Day. I saw him, but he was always talking to people because that's what we're doing at Media Day. We're interviewing people, and I regret not being able to walk up to him and just saying thanks, because when it comes to like the wrestling, I sat down one day as I was editing and I like binge watched 4 hours worth of his interviews. Just trying to see his style and everything. So yeah, salute to that. The art of conversation.
Have you met Chris?
No,
dude.
That's what I'm saying.
All
I
you
didn't
gotta do is meet him once; he'll remember you forever.
Yeah.
He's the nicest guy, the stereotypical Canadian, just nicest dude on the planet.
I'm looking forward to that happening. It will happen soon. Again, we're gonna speak something into existence. I know he's around here all the time. He was actually like he was interviewing some of the wrestlers at Impact, and Impact's here like 4 times a year doing TV tapings. And I was there the day before, and I was like, is he doing it from the hotel that they're at? I was like, he is. And I'm like, okay, hold on. He's closer than I think. I ran that night that I spent the 4 hours. I just sent him a DM and like, I didn't know if he was going to get it or whatever. But I'm like, hey, man, I just really, for the first time, sat down and watched your stuff and not just viewed it through whatever social media. And I, tried to give him his flowers and be like, hey, man, thank you. Cause like I felt like I learned something and the conversations were great too. So it was entertaining. And he responded and he's like, thank you. And it's like, it's cool. It's very cool to see the success of others and what we're all trying to do. Because I don't necessarily, there's a bit of me that's very competitive because of how much I love sports. But at the same time, there's like a limit of like, I think the attitude of everyone needs to be so protective. Like it doesn't have to be like that because everyone
No.
can win.
Especially in media, dude, when we're all trying to get interviews with people that we've dreamed about getting interviews with, all is, hey, so and so's in town. You want to come get like 5, 10 minutes? I'm going to be down there too, you know?
And
It's
that's
not
all.
like we're going to be screwing each other over.
Yeah, that's all it has to be. Unfortunately, it's not like that. There's
Not
also,
yet.
yeah, well, it just depends in certain circumstances. But that's kind of, it is what it is. But there, and also in sports, I don't know about you, because I know you're wide ranging. But when it comes to like sports radio and like really getting into it, because my career in radio, was I got into the game through music, through hip hop, and hip hop radio stations. But when I got to sports, and I was like, oh, this is what I've always wanted to do, but why are you going to listen to me talk about basketball when JJ Redick's over here or whatever NBA player
Exactly.
or whatever great or whatever analyst that I know is like Harvard educated that has all the analytics, but it's like, no, everybody knows the score of the game. We can all go on our phone and go on ESPN to know that the Orioles beat the Guardians 5-2 yesterday. Cool. But how you explain that and how you tell the story and your thoughts, everyone's different. So there's still a little bit of imposter syndrome, but we keep
No,
on
dude.
pushing, baby.
Everybody goes through that. Like we all watched the greats do it growing up, and that's why like we take bits and pieces from everybody else. My number 4, by the way, Howard Stern.
The
I would
GOAT.
love to interview the GOAT of interviewing. He'll probably go down as the greatest interviewer of all time.
No, 100%. And here's another thing I've never done. First off, I know he has the movie. I don't know if it's about his life. The movie that Howard
It
Stern.
kind of is.
Yeah, so I'd assume so. I've never watched that, and I don't think I've ever watched a full Howard Stern interview
You got
or
to.
watched the show. It's just one of those things. I'm a very big like if it's there and everyone's seen it or is with it, I'm good. Like Marvel movies, I love superheroes. Like it's cool. I thought like some people took it way too far, like adults arguing about what's primarily just like wrestling, something for kiddos. But then I had my son and I like involved myself. But there's a lot of things where I kind of stay away. And Howard Stern, I just knew he was the GOAT. And from what I saw, I was like, okay, I know why. But I never like fully watched. But that's a great one.
Yeah, I think he articulates well. He obviously does his research, is able to find stuff that no one else on the freaking planet is able to find about his guests, and then he has them talking. He gets them comfortable enough to where they're sharing these deep, dark, personal secrets. He's got the raunchy side. Like back in the day, he was very raunchy, was fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for cursing, and he wouldn't stop either. He's like, this is my show. This is what makes me my millions. I'm going to continue to do it. Like, I'll pay the fines, but I'm going to continue to do this, which takes a lot of balls too, which is really why I respect Howard Stern. And he really paved the way for like a Joe Rogan to start his show, to just have a normal back and forth conversation with people, and kind of the whole podcast world of people just giving their pure, honest opinions about things.
Yeah, honestly, the original podcast, it was called Radio. We still kind of exist, people. Since you went Howard Stern and obviously
Oh,
radio
let
and
me give
media,
you my third.
go
'Cause
for it.
You
Because I
jumped
did
ahead
too.
with Kendrick. My
Yeah.
third, Michael Kay, play-by-play voice of the New York Yankees. So he's also the host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN as well. I grew up Yankee season tickets. The reason I'm here today, the reason I got into broadcasting and podcasting in the media industry was because I grew up watching that guy. I'm like, he does that for a living. He gets paid to do that. I want to do that. So that's a dream interview for mine, just because that would be a full circle moment to connect with him.
No, 100%. And this is like you're making my heart happy because it's the same story for me.
Yeah.
The Guardians play-by-play, Tom Hamilton,
He's
same type of
awesome,
energy. I
dude.
was like, yeah, I went to sleep to this guy. How many summer nights? His energy, he gets to talk about this. Like, I don't know about you, but there was a very small part of my life where I was like, I want to be the one on the field. It was mainly like, no, I want to be the one talking about it. And like all these movies and shows and like music, some of these things I haven't done was because my family hated me because I would turn on sports radio. Like I'm talking 7, 8 years old. and I would be watching SportsCenter. I used to like look down on kids watching SpongeBob, like, you peasants. I'm over here with Stuart Scott, like watching SportsCenter. One of the people I was considering putting on my list that I've met, and I was so nervous that I did this thing where when I say Adrian and I'm nervous, it kind of sounds like AJ, but would be Peter Rosenberg. He's my like outside
He's
looking
been here.
in.
He was on the Corner podcast.
Yeah, he's one of the goats in his like
He does
journey.
a show with Michael.
Yeah, and he's on the hip hop Hot 97, one of the best hip hop stations in the country and one of the first. But he's not on the list. The next one, I'm gonna stay in the entertainment and radio, just like you did. You went Howard Stern and Michael K. I'll go Dan Le Batard.
Okay, so Dan is like probably the original guy because ESPN, it's like suit and tie, right? At least back in the day, it was almost. Dan Le Batard was never that way, dude. He always had. I mean, granted, he was on the radio, but he always had his simulcast on ESPN, and then he always had what was the show he did with his dad?
Highly questionable.
Highly questionable, which
Hi,
popped
Papi.
off, which is just like, oh, that's incredible. He invites his dad on, and his dad embarrasses him, and he's got the whole beef with Chael Sonnen going back and forth. I'm like, this is good television. That's a good one, dude. Dan Le Batard. I always forget about Dan Le Batard because he really paved the way too for young people to kind of speak their mind and kind of do things their own way. He had the cool grungy setup in his own office, and he had
in the studio. I don't know if you know this. His brother's an artist. Like he sells paint and does all that. So he did the whole studio. His dad came from a different country, obviously Cuba, to the United States to give his family a better life. My dad did the same from Costa Rica. So I connected with him. The funniest part is the reason I'm wearing this hat. I'm born and raised Cleveland, Ohio. My birthday is July 8th. July 8th is infamous in Cleveland and Miami sports history because that's the day that LeBron did the decision. So on my birthday, that's what LeBron did. But shortly after, or when LeBron came back, Dan Le Batard had put out a whole bunch of billboards throughout Akron because one of the first things LeBron did when he came back is he went to Akron's football field and did like a homecoming. And so surrounding it, he rented out all the billboards and put LeBron, you're welcome from Miami. And ESPN actually suspended him because he didn't tell ESPN. He just rented them out and paid for them himself. So I had knew of Dan Le Batard because he was on PT. He would sub in for PTI. I don't think, or Highly Questionable had just started. And I like immediately, I remember I was in college and I'm like, are we allowed to swear? I was like, who is this asshole thinking you're just going to come into my city? Miami, where people don't show up to games and they're terrible sports fans. Fast forward to when I was like, okay, I can actually be on the radio. I can do this. I'm going to school for this. I need to start I want to seek out who are the GOATs. And I'm like, I have so much admiration and respect. You brought up that he did his own thing. He never wanted to dress up. He never left Miami. They wanted him to go to LA to ESPN, build him all the fancy studios and everything. He's like, nope, I'm going to do it here with my brother's art. We're going to talk about whatever. He also voices that aren't represented in sports media, he put and gave them a platform. You're talking Bomani Jones, Mina Kimes, Pablo Torre, a whole bunch of people.
Katie Nolan recently on his show.
Yeah, Katie Nolan, Michael Smith, like a whole bunch of people. He really gave them the opportunity, whether it was on the radio show, whether it was on Highly Questionable, and the way he takes a stance and he stands for stuff, real life issues and things in the sports world, like Derek Jeter buying the Marlins and then immediately trailing all of the players after the city had to pay for this stadium and being like, yo, this is messed up. You guys did this on purpose. And then he leaves ESPN and starts his own thing, and he does it because he wants to do everything his own way. And I have a lot of respect for everybody, including you, that is like, no, I'm going to create something for myself because that's so important, because you don't need to marry yourself to wherever you work at and just think that the name behind you is what's going to hold you down, because in an instant you could be fired and they're going to have a new person right there.
Well, dude, that's the number one thing that people will teach you. Like my boss in college, who I worked at a TV station, told me, it's like, dude, you can get fired tomorrow and they'll replace you in an eye blink. They don't mean, like, you don't mean shit to them, right?
Yeah, you're just a check. You're just a budget. You're a budget. Your numbers on the budget of like, okay, we can save this by getting rid of this person. Who cares if the family, nice person, how many times you came in when someone called out and blah, 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 blah.
Does not matter.
So that's why I like salute, shout out to Dan, shout out to you, and just shout out to content creators that are like investing in themselves and trying to put themselves in the position, because you really can do this by yourself and you can have them come to you. I mean, look, Pat McAfee this week.
That's right, dude.
Number one, first off, he believed in himself so much that he walked away from $120 million from FanDuel and from just them doing whatever he wanted because it's Pat McAfee. Look at the success he's had. He goes to ESPN, and I know some people are like, he's not going to be the same, blah, 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 blah. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I think curse words are off the table, but that's about
They're
it.
allowing him to say shit, though. Because
Everything but the F word.
Yeah, ESPN's technically cable, so, like, you know how FX and TNT, like, they're raunchier than ABC or NBC because it's not broadcast, it's on cable. So they're allowing that to get, you know, that. But that's the difference between, like, Dan Le Batard and Pat McAfee. Pat's not going to talk about some real whatever issue that, like, crosses with the sports world. No, Pat's going to just swear about stuff. And, like, that's fine. But it's cool that not only did he walk away from something because he believed in himself, and he believed in himself so much that he's like $120 million. That's cool. Thank you so much, but we're going to take our talent somewhere else. He wasn't talking to like the ESPN, what is his name, Pitaro, the head of ESPN right now. No, he went to go talk to Iger and like the head of Disney to be like, hey, man, this is how I want to make this work. You want to put me on ESPN's YouTube? You want to do this, that, and third? And they smartfully went to him as a content creator. So if you build something, they will come and they will have to work within your field on your court, as opposed to vice versa.
Because again, when you probably with the first time you heard that, I know the first time I heard that he was inking the ESPN deal, or like the rumors were going around, I'm like, God, ESPN is just going to make him a suit and tie guy, right?
But he was at ESPN.
How big is the check?
Yeah, see, I understand that, but like with college football, he was just, it was funny the first 2 times he did college game day, and like it was just a little awkward because everyone's like, what is going on? Who is this guy? But he kept with it. He was himself. He was on, I remember they used to put him on, what's the show with Greenberg? Get Up. They would put him on Get Up and he'd just be ridiculous. Like he'd bring wrestling into it and like do a whole bunch of stuff. So he's never conformed to anything he's done. And like when you look at his professional like things that he's gone after, he's like made at least $1 million in everything. Wrestling, his podcast, him being a punter. It's like
everybody forgets the guy was a Pro Bowl punter, ladies and gentlemen, before everything else, like 3 lifetimes ago.
Yeah, so McAfee's not on my list, but he's of that same cloth of Le Batard, and Le Batard's definitely in there. That would be number 2. That's my 2.
My 2 is someone we've already talked about, Chris Jericho. He's the guy again, like that, one of those guys that would validate this show for me because he has done so much in. You know, at his age, dude, to continue to reinvent himself and reinvent himself and reinvent himself, like most of those guys, like the Randy Ortons, the John Cenas, the Dwaynes, who are all the same age as this guy, they all went on and did different things. Where Jericho stayed, even when he self-admittedly said, like, I've had burnout multiple times in pro wrestling. And he was able to stick around and continue to do it while also continuing to be the front man for his band that he built from the ground up. Granted, he's Chris Jericho. He's the 6-time, 7-time world champion, whatever it is. The Ocho, actually. He's an 8-time because he just won the Ring of Honor. He's the Ocho. But he's able to do all of these things, being a famous pro wrestler, but also building his own band where he's opening for Guns N' Roses. He's opening for Kiss, overseas. Like, He's living his dream. Like, he's met everybody. He's interviewed everybody that he's ever wanted to interview. And he's been able to do it with no excuses because he's also a dad of 3 kids. And the guy, like, where does he find time for sleep? Right?
Yeah. And you say dream. I'd argue dreams, which is cool. And it's like, yo, you actually can do that. No, that's dope. I love your passion that you're talking about Chris Jericho. I feel bad because I feel like I've lost it a little bit with him. But I just think it's like not being able to watch. At
this stage, maybe. I haven't watched AEW weekly since like 2019. But like obviously he's helping out the younger talents. Like we said, Ricky
He also joined AEW to build that from the ground up.
Yeah,
and like purposely was like going up against the Goliath that is the New York Yankees of the entertainment. And like I just said earlier, with all the success they're having, like they're doing it and they're kicking ass. And he's like one of the pillars. I know that they're doing the pillars angle with MJF and all the young guys, but he's like one of the stepping stones that really built that place. So that's a solid number 2. Is it time for number 1?
It is. I'll let you go first.
LeBron James.
That's a big one, dude.
It's gonna be
number 1 had to be big though.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I think that if I ever get the opportunity to sit one-on-one with him, I think it'd be his best interview of his career. From literally just being a kid in a basketball camp in the summer at like 6 or 7 years old and hearing the teenagers and the parents be like, hey, we have to go to this camp over here in another part of Cleveland or Akron because there's this kid called LeBron James, to then seeing him sell out a arena to go up against Carmelo, to then being the number one pick in his career and the heartbreak that he did Cleveland fans, and just 20 years later, like I hope I get that opportunity. I was in the press conference because the Lakers every year do one preseason game here in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah, what counts? Like, you get like a quote, or do you want like a full
No,
sit-down
I want the
interview?
Blue Wire Studios,
Yeah.
Bleacher Report. I want the camera right here. I want my glasses like right here, the Brian Gumble, and like,
Yep.
mm-hmm, 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 and get to do all of that. Like, I want that moment. So yeah, that's why LeBron's number one. I don't think any more explanation needs to be put.
You could
with
probably
that.
talk to him for hours about everything that he's doing too.
I mean, even just like on a basketball sense, not even uh the production company, the movies,
businessman,
yeah, the business, your homies, that Rich Paul and everyone else that's like also had your same work ethic in other ventures and have been just successful. And like this core group of kids from Akron, Ohio, which is like not the best part of the country by any means, and to come from that to where they are now is like remarkable. And then his kids or his marriage or this, that, and the third. Like there's so much, but it would be a pretty much a basketball conversation, and I would look forward to that. That is going to happen one day. I'll speak that into existence right now.
That's a huge one, dude.
Now it's your
you
turn.
always have to speak it into existence too, because like that's where the manifestation starts. Like I wouldn't have done this show if I thought like, oh, I'm going to start it out in my basement. That's where I started. My parents' basement in New Jersey. Did a lot of studios in Phoenix. Now we're here. Now we
No
do some stuff.
hesitation?
No hesitation at all. I remember first episode I ever did. I'm like, I'm doing this till the day I die. I didn't even think like business. Like I had no business sense when I started it, because I did it. I started in high school, did it throughout college, and then after college is when a few businesses came to me. They're like, "We'll sponsor you." I'm like, "Oh, I can make money doing
Yeah,
it."
wait a
It
second.
wasn't even because I was working odd jobs throughout high school and college. Like I didn't even think money.
It was
So
for the love of the game.
so this is my Instagram profile picture. If you want to zoom in on that, if we can see that a little bit. So I'm wearing a hat. If you know what that logo is. So I'm a huge rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
That is the Foo Fighters logo. Dave Grohl, frontman of the Foo Fighters, is probably my all-time
There it is. 'Cause
favorite
that's your
idol.
guy.
Just the way the guy carries himself. He's a East Coast boy, came from nothing, was the drummer for arguably the biggest band in the 90s in Nirvana. His frontman commits suicide, unfortunately, and he's left to go, what do I do now? Oh, I'm going to write my own music. And that music turns out to be some of the greatest rock hits of all time. And the Foo Fighters are like the number one rock band today, still going 30 years later.
It's crazy.
Right? And the guy, literally, he is the face of rock and roll. I mean, I love Dave Grohl. He's not a good-looking guy. He really isn't if you see him up close and personal, but he's the nicest, most genuine, down-to-earth rock star out of every other celebrity in the music industry that I've ever met.
Let me go specific with you. Would you treat that interview like, would you try to go inside on his life, more the music,
Well,
some of
that's
the stories
thing
surrounding
is-
tours? Like, what's the angle?
The thing is, he's also done so many documentaries. He's done so many, both of himself and of other musicians. Like he's been the glue of the relationships in the rock industry. Like everybody's friends again because Dave Grohl brought them all together for documentaries, soundtracks. He did one documentary where they put out an album with like him and like 50 different musicians.
amazing.
Like Stevie Nicks, Corey Taylor, Paul McCartney, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, like all these guys. He just brought them all back. And for me, it would just be a sit-down conversation talking about the love of music, dude.
Well, I'm looking forward to that
just
happening.
a talk, just to hang out, smoking cigarettes, cigars, whatever he wants to do. I
Or
want it
other
to be
things.
laid back, dude. Because he said everything he's had to say, right?
Yeah.
I just want to talk to him and just pick his brain about whatever it is I want to talk about. You know, that's why I started this. This is why you interview people. You want to talk about, you want to ask them the questions you want to ask, not the questions that the station wants to ask or ESPN wants you to ask, you know? That's why Pat McAfee's deal is so huge, that he gets to continue to do whatever the hell he wants on that platform, which no one else has really been able to do. You know, like if I talk to Grohl one day, I'm just going to sit down and talk to him about music.
See, I love this. Like first off, the energy you're giving off, and like the no hesitation is something that I have. Sometimes I have trepidation with it, depending on things. Because like if I want to go specific, you brought Dave Grohl up. I'll go back to Kendrick. because he's so quiet and like his last album, he didn't release one for almost 5 years. I'll be like, oh snap, what's the angle? I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lid that I need to pop off, and once I do it, but how do I do it? But no, and also your story about the podcast and being like, nope, we're gonna do this, and I'm not gonna stop this until I die. Like it's one of the biggest, like, we're wrestling fans, right?
Yeah.
Podcasts, when it comes to podcasts, like wrestling was one of the first, before it was like serial killer stories and going inside of murders. Wrestling was like one of the big genres for podcasts when we talk about, what is this, oh 06, oh 07, oh 08, oh 09, during that little era when everything blew up. And it's like I could have done that as a kid. I was in esports. I loved Halo and I used to go to tournaments and things like that. I remember, Ninja, right? I
Of
feel like
course.
everyone knows Ninja. That I We were at tournaments where that kid, just like many of us, was in a hotel room with 20 other kids because we didn't have money, because this isn't like a baseball travel league where your parents are going to spend all that money and not hesitate. Like, he went there, he slept on an AC, and he became what he was because he believed in himself, and he went on streaming and he went on Twitch and all this stuff. And like there was a lot of times where I was like on the sidelines, and it's like, nope, we can't do that. You got to go full throttle, because the number one thing, you have to make something, like, it just has to exist. You just have to do it. It'll get better, but you just have to do it.
That's everyone's biggest fear starting out. Like, what if it doesn't work out? It's not going to right away.
Most
It's gonna
podcasts
take a
don't.
few years, dude. I remember my first episode. You could still see it completely raw. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to talk. It was just a lot of ums, a lot of dead air. Like, so Glaber Torres went 2 for 2 last night. What do you think about that? Nobody cares.
Waiting for a caller on a recorded podcast. This isn't live radio.
You had no idea what you're doing, but that's how you start, man.
And
So
there's no, listen, I am a student. I hope one day to get my doctorate in YouTube University. The tools are there. And yeah, no, it's just, that's an incredible list. And I like your stories on each one. Salute to you. Because for me, I was kind of like, hold on, there's a couple. Who would I put in there? I'm just glad, like I told you. With
oh,
the
dude, I thought about my 5, and I'm like, I'm sticking to them. I'm not even gonna think about anybody else because I'd love to interview LeBron. I'd love to interview Kendrick. They're probably on that list somewhere.
Yeah,
I
but
gotta
then
have like a top. We're gonna have to do like a top 100.
that would be too crazy. That would be too nuts, but it can be done. And it will be done. Episode 692, this is? You could do 100 more. You could do 1,000 more. You are going to do that. So let's do.
I'm the Ric Flair of podcasters. I'm doing this till they're like, dude, quit, please stop.
Yeah, and luckily,
It's
like,
ugly.
I don't see this podcast taking a weird angle when you're 67 and like minute 40 you're giving a Blue Chew ad with like blood going down your face, with your daughter being like, maybe this isn't it. Maybe we can just relax. We didn't work all this hard to do this at this age, so you'll be good.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming in though. Do you have time, or do you got to go?
No, I mean, we got time. You want to keep going? We can keep rolling.
You want to interview my next guest with me?
Who's going to be here?
He's that really big guy over there. You could see him, Sean Merriman, who's waiting for me right now.
Oh, he's always in Vegas and
That's
always
right.
here. Let's talk. We talk
Let's
some
do
football.
it. This was episode 692. You guys, I do got to give a special shout out to our guys over at OSNAP Active Lifestyle. Head on over to osnap.com/Jack O'Hara to receive your free packets today. Become an ambassador too, guys. I'm going to give you some of these as well. osnap.com/Jack O'Hara. This was episode 692 of the O Show. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. Check it out, guys. Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Dope.
Yeah, dude. And you could sit like